In this problem we have a arrow going to try and hit an orc, and we have to calculate if Legolas will hit his target. So we know in the x motion that the initial velocity would be equal, in the x direction would be equal to the initial velocity times the cosine of theta. We know that the initial x position would be 0 meters. We're trying to find the final x position, and we do not know the time. In the y motion, we know that the initial velocity would be equal to the initial velocity times the sine of theta. We know that the y initial is 0, and the y final will be 0, and we do not know the time. So we know that the final x position is equal to the x initial position plus the velocity in the initial velocity in the x direction times time. And so that would be basically just the x final equals the initial velocity times the cosine of theta times time. So then in the y direction, we know that y final equals y initial plus the initial velocity times sine of theta times time minus 1/2 g times squared. So we know that y final and y initial are 0, so that brings our equation to the initial velocity times the sine of theta times time equal to 1/2 g times squared. Because we're trying to solve for t, since we don't know t or xf, and then we can plug t into this and find xf. So that gives us t equals 2 times v initial sine theta over g. So now that we know t, we can plug it in to the other equation, and that would give us 2 times the initial velocity squared times cosine theta times sine theta over g. And when we plug all of that in, we get that the arrow would travel 255.1 meters. 255.1 meters. So that means that the arrow will be 44.9 meters short of its target.